All right. Hello, everyone. And thanks for joining for our UG Insider series. Love the energy, Nathan. Love also that there's a responsible adult in the room with Courtney. So very excited to kick it off today. I am fully recharged, according to my Whoop, really, really good sleep recovery, which is probably because of the eye mask. Big recommendation from me. So today I am, before we talk about the product development that's coming from Stefan, I want to talk about a little bit something that's even bigger. It's about where we see the go-to-market landscape evolving, because it's both, it shapes for us what we're developing, but it's also really important for you because the decisions we make today, the structure we put into place, these will really compound as we're using more AI. So let's get started with the reality of where things are actually at. In June 25, we did a survey with Winter about the state of AI adoption in sales and marketing. And back then, the results were actually kind of shocking. Only 7% of go-to-market teams reported clear ROI. And I mean, in the world of AI, that's already ancient. A whole lot has happened, especially in the last few months with things like Cloud Cowork and with like the coding tools getting really, really good. But I'm certain that even today, there are a lot of teams that would say that they hope to achieve more with AI. And so the question is, why is that? And so if we look at the areas in which AI had a huge impact, which is, for example, in coding and law, it's actually fundamentally different. Because in coding, all you need is your own internal code database. In law, all you need is the contract at hand, and then you put AI on top of it. But in sales and marketing, you actually need more. First, you need your own internal data that's usually dispersed across many, many different systems. But then you also need ever-changing and accurate, hopefully, external data. And that's what makes it so complicated. Because if you're using AI on top of bad data, then you're just automating bad decisions. And so when we look at the go-to-market tech stack, it's actually, we see a lot of tools that act, but we don't see a lot yet that think, that make decisions, that they identify the next best action. So typically, a current go-to-market tech stack looks a little bit like this, where on the left side, you have a system of records. That's typically your CRM. That's where information is stored. And then on the right side, you have a system of actions, like your sales engagement to send emails, your dial for the call, your marketing automation for marketing engagement. But the question is, where's the brain? Who actually makes the decision? And if you don't have a centralized system in the middle that connects your system of record with your system of actions, then someone else is filling in the brain. And what we're seeing is that it's typically each individual human's brain making the decision. But that also leads to inconsistencies because everyone does it slightly differently. It's also really difficult with the information overload that we're facing that every single individual can really make the very best decisions. And so that's where UserGems comes in. That's what we are building today. We're building the AI command center for go-to-market. We're connecting the system of record, the CRM, with the system of actions, with the brain in the middle. And the brain consists of two elements. It's data and signals. It's all the first party, which means the data that you have, the third party, which is all the external information, data and signal that lives somewhere else. It's analyzing your call transcript. It's getting information from emails. It's all of that data. But then you also need the intelligence to take all of that information and prioritize the accounts, personalize the outreach, and then ultimately orchestrate into your system of actions. And so looking deeper into what we're building and what Stefan is going to show you today, it's really the brain that connects the data with the actions. It's and the intelligence. So it's the data agent is one of the agents we're creating, which is focused on the signal capture. Again, that first-party signals, third-party signals. It's everything that happens in your own system as well as externally. it's more and more using AI signals. So these are signals that are completely personalized, customized to your business. And it's combining it with, again, ever-changing account and contact information. So you also need to run the discovery. And then the intelligence agents build on top of that, where they utilize this information for scoring of the accounts and contacts. If you go after the wrong accounts, if you go after the wrong contacts, then whatever you're doing will not be successful. And then ultimately, once you build the list, once you personalize the outreach based on the signals, based on the data, then it's about orchestrating for both sales and marketing. We strongly believe that in order to be successful, you need to coordinate both the sales. You need to make sure people see your brand, see your messaging across every channel, whether it's email, LinkedIn, phone calls, as well as advertising. And for us, it more and more means that you want to consume the UserGems information wherever you are. And that could be in the UserGems platform. It could be in your outreach, Salesloft, your Salesforce, your HubSpot through the Chrome extension. But it can also be through the LLM. We want to consume the data, put it into our own AI processes. And UserGems is modular. You can use all of it, or you can just use the elements that you need for your system. And so if we look at the future of UserGems, it's also important to ask the question, where is this actually going? Because we need to understand like the decisions we make today, how they influence the future of our go-to-market. And so if we look at the history and the future, like in 2025, we've seen AI come to go-to-market. We've seen like early on, it was just AI writing assistants bolted onto existing tools. We've seen a lot of AI SDRs come to the market, but then ultimately not be successful. Because what they did is they used AI for quantity, but not for quality. So really we saw spray and pray V2. And that's why we weren't successful, because it didn't take advantage of what AI is actually good at, which is analyzing and identifying a lot of information. That's what we're seeing in 26, where AI is used for more and more action. It's used to identify signals, to drive prioritization, to take action. And we're seeing this split between AI automatically taking care of lower priority tasks, while at the same time having humans focus on the high value engagement. And that means that because we're not focusing our tasks on the manual efforts anymore, we now have actually much better time for the high value effort, like the phone calls, like the very important messages. And then we're seeing, and we're hearing today from Stefan also about accessing through any tool that you're using, like for example, Cloud Cowork. And the important part here is that this sets the foundation, because as we're using AI this year to set the baseline in terms of which data am I consolidating, which signals am I identifying and prioritizing, AI more and more learns what works for us. The keyword here is the context, because again, what's really difficult for a human is actually looking at 40 different data points and trying to understand what's the next action I should be doing. We always think we need to ask like our salespeople, by the way, do this one more thing, but it's already the 19th thing we're asking them to do. But that's what AI is good at, understanding a whole lot of data. And that data means not only current data, but it also means historic data. And that's where context becomes more and more important. It's about what actually led to an opportunity, to a closed one, to a response. And the more we understand what were the drivers before an outcome happens, we can more and more fine tune. And by in 2027, this will be more and more AI. It's going to be the agents who will make the recommendations and who more and more run them autonomously. And if we believe this, then actually the important question that also comes to mind is, what's actually the role of the human then? And so once again, if we look at the history, in 2025, we talked to a lot of sales and marketing leaders, and it was still a whole lot of operational work for everyone, like manually identifying accounts and contacts, manually prioritizing them, manually writing the emails. We started to use AI a bit more and more, but really in 2026 is when we saw the shift from AI is taking care of a lot of the manual tasks, which gives us time back to focus on what's actually important. And important means we are setting more and more the strategy, and AI is doing more and more of the work. And we will see an even bigger switch in 2027, once where our job is we set the full strategy, we set the guardrails, and then we let AI do its job based on all the data, the signals, and the history. And it's really then for us to come in and just review the work AI is doing. We're telling him what to do, AI does it, and then we review it and we iterate. And more AI will reiterate by itself based on the outcomes that it sees. And there are a lot of changes in the AI world that we're seeing, but we're also hearing from companies that it's actually really overwhelming to understand, of all the many vendors in the market, which one should I choose? Because let's face it, everyone is promising the world. And it's difficult for the vendor, so please have some pity with us, but it's also very difficult for the buyer. And so what we actually think matters more than like individual data and signals that a vendor is offering is actually the philosophy behind what they're building and why. Because if you look at the vendors, it actually becomes very clear what their philosophy is. And based on the philosophy is what functionality they're building, what data and signals they are generating, and how they see go-to-market technology should be used by the end user and by the administrator. And so in broad strokes, the way we see the market is like this, starting with obviously the big guy in the room, which is ZoomInfo. They're very much focused on data coverage. And oftentimes like the data quantity is the bigger focus than the data quality. But they have a full suite that allows SDRs to run all of their workflows, give them a lot of freedom of what to do. Talking about Sixth Sense and demand-based, they really came from an intent-based mindset and specifically intent-based advertising. Sales is a little bit more of an afterthought for them. So if you're really big on advertising, they could be a good choice. Then talking about the newer players on the market, so Nooks, Unify, Reggie, Comment Room, they're very focused on the breadth of signals. And oftentimes it's more the quantity of the signals than ultimately the quality of the signals. But very similarly then, for example, is ZoomInfo, they're very focused on giving the end user, the SDR, the AE, the seller, a lot of information about an individual contact, about an individual account, and giving them a lot of freedom, allowing them to set up their own workflows and running their own motions. And then lastly, we have Clay, which I think many of you know. They are very versatile. You can do a lot with it if you have the nerves, the time, the energy, and the resources to do that. UserGems position itself slightly different than others because we are focused on a few things. We're very much focused on data quality. If you know about UserGems, you know the history. We started with champion tracking that required extremely high data accuracy, and it's still the foundation for all the data and even for each individual signal. If you don't have the data quality, then all the signals fail. But we're also very big on the orchestration between sales and marketing. We believe that it needs to be coordinated at the same time towards the same person. And the important thing here is also that the coordination part, we believe, should be done by the brain in the middle, and the brain is managed, again, centrally, which means there is a person in the organization identifying the best-in-class playbooks, setting them up, automating them, making sure they're getting put in front of the rep at the right time. And with that, with the overview of the market, the overview of the vendors, I want to bring it back to what we are building. As we are building the brain in the middle with the data agents, with the intelligence agents, we're not focusing on the actioning piece. We're making our focus on the brain in the middle, which means we're not building a sequence, we're not building a dialer, we're fully focused on that. And we'll now have Stefan tell us more about the exciting news, the functionalities that we're developing. And for everyone that doesn't know, Stefan is my identical twin brother, and co-founder. So even though he looks the same, I swear it's not me presenting the next one as well.